Hey, Myles, Biggs ideas. What is happening today, my friend?
What's up, Dave? Rocking my overshirt, keeping warm.
You know what that overshirt reminds me of? It
What is
reminds me of this guy that just launched a book.
that?
It has the same colors, red, white, and blue.
Hey, there you go.
Congratulations with your book launch, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
You know what? We're going to have to put that in the comments so people know where to find it. So I think that's really exciting. So I think it's awesome to say, listen, I just want to say it one more time. TED Talker, Myles Biggs. Author of a book, Myles Biggs. Top 5 podcasts, Myles Biggs. Man, you're killing it, dude. I'm so happy for you. It's such a privilege to be able to do this show with you every week.
And everybody, guess who's in the book? Dave.
Jenny?
No, you are. You got to put in the book. So you guys want the dirt on Dave.
Not too much dirt, I hope. Not too much dirt. Well, listen, everybody, thank you for joining us today. We are live on 3 locations, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And we're going to have a great conversation, which is a follow-up from last week's conversation. Are trade shows dead? And to have this conversation, we thought we would ask no other than Jenny Keleher from Build with Rise. Rise, they have, I think, 2 million followers. She's going to follow up on this on their whole site and everything that they're doing. And we'll let Jenny tell us a little bit about that. But first, please hit that like and share button and follow us and subscribe to YouTube. Sound good?
That's awesome. Let's do it.
Let's jump into this today because I'm pretty excited. We might have our dog join us too, I think. Hey, what's happening, Jenny?
Oh, hi.
How are you today?
I'm great. Yeah, my dog's right there.
There he is.
Doing what we wish we were all doing. Chilling.
I love it. All right, Jenny. So, this is going to be a fun conversation. We've been talking a little bit about it offline. We're carrying this over from last week. Our trade show's dead. And who's better to talk about this than you? I mean, listen, you guys are in the digital world. You have a huge following, on social media, your website. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we're going to jump into this conversation.
Sure. So Rise is a social enterprise, and we're an online platform. But our main goal is accelerating the adoption of sustainable home improvement and building through education. So like our bread and butter and kind of where we started was educating homeowners. So we do that with daily articles and weekly newsletter and social media. We also have a database of products where they can see the payback period and sustainable features. We have a massive lookbook of inspirational photos and all that stuff. But kind of as we kept growing, we started realizing that we kind of need to educate and empower and connect everybody. So then we started adding builders on there the homeowners could connect with, started adding manufacturers who can list products. We're also we have the utilities run there and all their rebates. And we've even recently started engaging with realtors. So like you guys talk about on your show all the time, really the best way to push sustainable and green building forward is kind of getting everybody on the bus. And that's what we're doing with Rise.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's a lot of work getting everybody on the bus, but it's a lot of fun too, because, there's so many new people taking a look at what you guys are doing, what we've been doing on the show and what Myles is doing with this podcast. And I think that's part of it, right? It's the journey. It's the journey. And it's fun to see that so many other people are actually starting to tune in, and we have this huge momentum happening, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, we were so happy to find you guys, and we've met awesome people, like really close with you guys, really close with the Housing Innovation Alliance, and they're doing a ton of really cool events. You guys had Brett Little on a couple weeks ago, and we just kind of roped him in. He's reviewing articles for us and stuff. So it's a really very incestuous community, right? But it's really nice to see.
Yeah, no, it is. And hey, Mark, Willie, if you're out there, have we found our Brett sunglasses yet that he wears, those rose colors?
Oh my God.
We're going to have him back on the show, and we're going to show up with the same glasses. I think it'll be a lot of fun. Well, what do you think, Myles? How do you want to kick it off? Our trade show's dead. I think we got a bunch of topics for everybody. So why don't we start with you?
Well, I feel like Jenny sort of kicked it off there, right? That here's what Rise is doing. They've found little pockets like this with Dave Cooper Live. They're interacting, they're guest starring, right? Like Jenny's doing today, and meeting new people and connecting that way versus a trade show. So I think this is just a really great example of what they're doing in lieu of trade shows is, talking to people like you and me, right?
Yeah.
That's just a good example. We kind of talked last week. For those that didn't tune in, the summary was, we don't think they're dead forever, but they're definitely taking a nap like Jenny's dog right now in the background. They're hibernating. And so what do we do in the meantime? Was the ultimate question.
Right.
So I think Jenny made the first point there, that what we do in the meantime is things like this. You're educating, like Rise has been doing for years, but educating wherever possible through online content.
Yeah, and we were, so when the pandemic really hit, we were kind of one of the folks that we just saw a massive uptick in traffic and engagement and following, and it was wild. It was just people they couldn't do, so they were taking the time to learn and educate themselves.
Right.
Which is great for folks like you and I, but it's really difficult for the folks who are out there in the industry who need to be working and getting projects done.
Well, that's a great conversation right there. So let's talk about that, right? So it's gotten busier. It's gotten super busier for myself and Myles. I mean, it's crazy how much is, coming across us every day. So from your perspective and what you're seeing with suppliers and vendors and consumers, you're seeing a big uptick. Are you seeing a big uptick in people using different mediums of social media to get the word out now that they're not doing trade shows? Are they taking that money and allotting it to different places?
Yeah. So kind of what we were talking about before the cast started was people are still concerned about the same outcomes that they were getting at trade shows. So anybody who is worth their salt in marketing or sales would go to a trade show with a very specific goal in mind. Generally, it's connections or booking calls or getting leads or making sales. So these folks are just kind of desperately shopping around for any kind of digital tool that's going to give them the same return on investment. And what we're finding in general is that digital is just far more cost effective, whether you're choosing to do advertising online or you're choosing to participate in virtual conferences.
Yeah.
Like, it's cheaper, but the crappy part is that it's cheaper for attendees and companies, but there's definitely another side of the industry that's struggling, and that's those folks who are running trade shows. It's really kind of unfortunate, but I think the industry was going this way with more digital tools, but it's just accelerated it so fast.
Yeah, in fact, I'm actually going to put don't get me on my spelling, Jenny. I know it already. So, and I'm putting it up there anyhow. Another question, because I think it's a great question. You know what tolls? Jeez, I did. I already did it. But basically, what are you using out there? So if you're listening, what mediums are you using now that you're not spending your marketing dollars at trade shows? That's what I want to hear from the audience as a kickoff. So tell us how you guys are looking at it. Are you using social media? Are you doing your own little private events? I think it would be great to know. Let's see. Go ahead, Myles. Take off on this. I got to fix my spelling.
It could have been, at least it was polls, not trolls, Dave, right? It could have gone two different ways there. So you're good.
I live in New England. We have tolls everywhere.
Yeah, there you go.
What tools are you using now that trade shows slowed? I didn't say dead on that one because they're not dead as we know it, but they will be. All right. So moving on, let's talk about that, Jenny. So if I'm, in I guess marketing for some supply company or an advertiser that's looking to still show their goods, so people know that, hey, we're alive, we're out here, we're doing this. Now we're not connecting, now we're not hanging out at the social nightlife parties like at IBS. We talked about that a little bit. Like, that's what I love doing, but that's where we do a lot of business. So how are we going to do that now? And how is Rise taking all this information and using it to help their clients?
Well, it's different whether you're talking about salespeople or, I guess, marketing. I guess from a sales perspective, like, folks need to be finding those kind of like trade show floors out there on the internet. They need to figure out, okay, what's my niche? Is it structural insulated panels? Is it whatever? And find those very niche conversations that are happening, and then go and walk that trade show floor. You're going and you're getting into people's DMs after the cast ends, or commenting, you're asking questions, you're engaging, and that kind of mimics that networking experience. That might not cost a ton of money, but it is a very time-consuming experience, and you need to be getting trained and training your salespeople on how to do that properly. On the marketing side, you just need to do a lot of experimenting with how to spend your money.
Yeah.
So really, yeah. So, and again, you need to find where your users are. What we're finding is we're kind of that digital platform where people are finding that sustainability minded audience. So kind of partners and builders and manufacturers that we're attracting are folks who are kind of in that community already. They want to find homeowners who know what high performance means, and they know to look for a triple glaze window, not a double glaze window. So that's what our customers are finding. Are finding that like they don't have to worry about the education side, but the folks that they want to get to are on the platform. So that's kind of, but we're not the only one, right? There's tons of options out there you can do on Google and Facebook, but you just need to be looking and experimenting.
Sure. So Myles, how let's talk about this a little bit. So there's different ways of doing it, but it's like anything else. Unless you put the time and the effort in, no different than if you're at a trade show and you're walking around booth to booth, trying to get invited to the hottest parties in town so you can meet people that you want to network with and do things with. How is it done now? I mean, we know what how we're doing it and we're seeing results from it, but why don't you tell us your perspective on this, Myles?
Yeah, so I love the analogy there of finding your niche, finding your hall in the trade show, right? And then walking that floor. And where do you find that online? Google, right? You Google topics that your company is involved in or you want to be known for. You look up hashtags on all the different social media platforms, and you start to see who is out there creating content around that topic already, who's commenting on it, who's following it, who's posting all the things. And then you start interacting. You don't just passively say, oh, that's cool. Look what Mark Willie's doing, right? You talk to him. You ask him a question. You send him a message. You try to get on the phone with him. And you have to do that 1,000 times over with as many people as you can. And it becomes a numbers game, just like anything in sales or marketing. It's that funnel analogy where you've got to move people from unaware to aware, from aware to informed, from informed to convinced, and then from convinced to a customer. And so you just got to have a lot of those conversations and funnel them down to actionable relationships that result in whatever it is you were hoping to get from the trade show. If that's more leads, more speaking opportunities, sales, whatever that KPI is for you. But we talk about Gary Vee a lot, Dave. This is his like $1.80 approach. If anybody has heard that, where he's talking about you have to just Google and start commenting and doing that every single day, and eventually it pays off. Now, unfortunately, if you're watching this and it's November 5th, I started working from home for the pandemic on March 13th, I think. You were late to the game, but you should still start. The game's still being played. Right. But ideally, people, if you had started doing this in March, you would be way ahead. You'd be sitting pretty right now, but don't let that discourage you. Because I know a lot of people I've talked to that are very discouraged right now and feeling like it's too late, whatever. Why start that now? Because 2021 is going to come and fix everything. I just don't agree with that. There's not going to be a flip that switches and sends us back into the world. So you got to start now.
Yeah, for sure. Jenny, I saw you snickering up there while Myles was saying some of that. What do you got?
No, I was just like Myles with the roast. But it is kind of like it's better late than never thing. I kind of want to shift gears because I just thought of something very interesting I heard this morning. And it's that I think permanently we're going to see a dramatic decrease in attendance in the kind of big international trade shows, like your IBSs and such. But what they're already seeing is a decreased interest in the smaller local events. So even ones that are based in your state or like your tri-city area, because you're not spending $4,000 on a flight. You're not afraid about COVID-19. And it's just like a different kind of networking. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. So you're saying they're seeing an increase in local events versus bigger events around the country or globe. Yeah. Listen, I can see that. I even see builders associations. I'm still getting invites. They're still having their events where they get together for small get-togethers with vendors or what have you. So good, bad, or indifference. But I do see a trend going that way. It makes sense, right? You can control who you're around. When you're at IBS, for instance, the International Builders Show, it is so much energy and so much fun, but you're surrounded by 100,000 people. There's no way to control social distancing in an environment like that.
Dave, were you at IBS this year?
I was, yeah.
Do you remember hearing about COVID-19 showing up, walking around Las Vegas, and it was like a little bit.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, you know what? I didn't, but I spent so much time interviewing the whole day. My time's not really just walking around as much as I'd like to. I didn't really hear about COVID until we got home, and then I was at World of Modular down in Orlando. About a couple weeks later, and that's when it kind of hit. And I was lucky enough to get a flight home before they shut everything down.
Yeah, it was definitely spooky, and that was really early on. We had no idea what it was going to be, and I'm kind of sitting in this trade show floor with 120,000 people, and was like, "Oh,
yeah." Start looking for your mask. Well, you know what? And luckily enough, it really didn't I don't think it made a huge impact at that time. So I think it was just still new, and we're hearing about it, and we knew it was coming. So that's the good thing, I suppose. So. All right, let's get back to this. You said something it's really interesting is, the salespeople, all these corporations, companies, they have salespeople. And what we're seeing, and we see it on the show, Myles, you see it on your show, is the networking that's happening and the banter that happens in the sidebars of conversation. Social media, whether you like it or not, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, all of those things, being part of groups that are about what you do, whether it's sustainability, offsite construction, any of those things, it's very pertinent to chime in. Because that's how you're having the conversation today. And if you don't like writing, most of the platforms let you send a quick video comment.
Yeah. Not chiming in is like going to IBS and walking the trade show floor without ever talking to anybody.
Preach.
Why did you fly out there, right? Or what? It's like setting up a booth, but then putting a big door and locking it in front of it, and nobody can come in and talk to you, right? You have to engage. You got to put yourself out there, and sure, it's uncomfortable. Nobody wants the way they look on camera or the sound of their voice or anything, right? But it's not about you in that scenario. It's about either what you need to learn or what your company needs to get from that interaction, or what you can provide on the other side of it. And that's what you need to focus on. So it's still interesting to me how many people don't put, like, not even put themselves out there, but just a quick comment or offering an opinion or just support, right? Putting your name out there as somebody who's active and in the game versus on the sidelines. Yeah, for sure. Hey, listen, I can see a bunch of people are watching. Hit that like button. Let us know you're there.
What are you doing?
The booth.
Come on. Let's tune in, be part of the conversation. Let's have some fun. So if you are watching, hit that like and share button right now. And we have a bunch on LinkedIn. We have some on YouTube. We have some on Facebook. So let us know that you're there. We appreciate it. That's why we do this, right? To have conversation, to have some fun. If you want to pick on us, we like that too. Whatever. Let's just do it. I love it. So, but you're absolutely right. We have to, communicate. The people that really have engaged in social media have really, they're winning. They're making deals happen. They're networking. It happens all the time on the Dave Cooper Live, like the series in the week. And Myles, even for you, people reach out to you for marketing. So, and there's all this conversation that's happening on the side. And then there's this offline conversation that happens. And then a couple months go by and we run in and goes, oh yeah, we're doing a whole system with so-and-so. And, we struck a business up. We found it on the, we found each other on the platform. That's what it's about, right?
Totally. Yeah. It's that the sort of foresight to plan ahead a little bit. If we go back to the IBS analogy, I don't know if you guys have tried this, but I tried an experiment at IBS this year, where I brought podcast equipment and I was walking up to people. Now, Dave had the opportunity to be like, hey, we're live already. And you stick a camera in their face and they can't really say no. Right. But so I'm coming up with people and saying like, hey, I've got this podcast, like, let's talk. And people will be like, who the hell are you? Like, what are we talking about? Did you call ahead? Did you set an appointment? Right. And so I think what the success is when you go to the big shows, you plan ahead. You have your book, booked out, like the date book. So you're meeting this person on this day at this time. You're setting up these meetings off the trade show floor versus just accosting people out of the blue. I was essentially trying to slide into somebody's DMs in person and getting the hand. But it's interesting because I think so many people don't plan ahead even now with it being virtual and trying to set up an actual meeting versus just dropping in on people and bombing DMs, because It happens every time. I'm sure it's going to happen after the stream. Every time I do one of these with you or elsewhere, whatever. Any other stream, Dave, I get a connection request from a bunch of people, and then a DM's like, hey, I saw you buy this. And so I think when we talk about salespeople, and whether it's a real trade show and the mistakes I made, not planning ahead, thinking people would love to talk on a podcast and learning, they want to be prepared for that. Instead, it's the same thing. You're trying to get the most out of this virtual trade show. There is a little bit of decorum to it all, right? You want to try to get on to be on guest versus just stealing from everybody in the comments. You want to provide value and educate versus taking and trying to set up a timed meeting instead of just monopolizing, a little crack in the door you see.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You're absolutely right. So a perfect example of this, and we talked about it a couple shows ago, and Jenny, you probably see it as well, is as soon as somebody sends you a connection request, you think you want to connect, bam, and all of a sudden you get this long sales pitch. It's just, and it's funny. It just drives me absolutely crazy. And then all of a sudden I disconnect. Like we're done.
My favorite is when they call me like Bob or John or something. It's not even my name. Like, they copy and pasted that sales message from somebody else to you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jenny.
No, it's that's totally it. It's like people, you're not even warming them up. You're not even making friends with them. People purchase from people that they like. So you need to find something in common with them and kind of just get chatting. Talk to them about the cast you guys were just on. Ask them, like, do you know Dave? Like, literally anything. Do you remember, Myles? This is a bad example. After last week, I accosted Myles with like 20 questions about podcasting. And here we are. We're still friends. So obviously it didn't go that bad.
No, I think that's a good example, right? So you didn't hit me up and say, hey, Myles, you want to advertise with Rod?
Right. Okay. That's true.
That's true. Hey, I saw you on the stream. I have this question. I think you could help me. And it's like a very thing. Because I'm not saying don't try to connect to new people. But there's like, you want to meet with somebody for the first time at IBS. You don't just drop in on their booth and say, hey, I'm here to talk to this VP. You say, hey, I see you're going to be at IBS. I'd love to meet with you. Here's a time that works for me. Does work for you. You set it up so that they know you're coming. Same thing with connections. I forget your intro, but you said, saw you with Dave. Question about podcasts. Sure. What can I help you with? Right. And then we got in a conversation. And then if you decided, hey, this was great, Myles, do you want to buy this now? It's at least we have this rapport built, and it's not, I have no idea who you are or what you're about.
Well, you did literally say I could talk forever about podcasting. And I went, great. This guy's going to have a lot of fun talking to me. Let's do it. And then I'm going to upsell him.
That's it. Well, here it comes. So, Myles, earlier in the show, we said, if anybody out there wants to give us a hard time, of course, Ashley started on us already. Jenny missed the plaid memo. That's okay.
Thanks, guys.
We didn't plan this. Everybody doesn't realize that it looked like I had black eyes before we got on the show. I was underneath my truck and I had oil drip.
No, he was trying on makeup and didn't get rid of it.
Yes, my daughters, were dressing me up. That's okay. That's what dads do. All right. So why don't we say hi to a few people so we know they're out there. Of course, Jennifer is in the background. Always welcome, everyone. Glad to have Myles and Jenny Keleher today. Absolutely. So always great. And, of course, you got the Mark Build Small because he does Willies, better known as Mark the Bare Naked Whaley on our BS Friday show, which is, by the way, tomorrow at 1 p.m. So, hey, Mark, what's happening? We threw the gauntlet down from Mark. We said that he has to paint his beard with passive purple tomorrow for the show. He hasn't responded to me yet. I don't know. I may be pushing my luck, but here's the thing. I know if I do that to Mark, he's going to come back hot and heavy. So I'm just teasing Mark. Nah, just kidding. All right. We got John Jaworski. Hey, John, thanks for joining us today. Glad to have you. We got Henry Mickelberg out there joining us. And we have Ashley with Zoom fatigue, our virtual trade shows the future, or should companies be doubling down on digital marketing?
Yeah.
So give us that. Like, should companies be doubling down on digital marketing?
Yes. And I say this because, it is not unusual for one company to go to 60 trade shows a year. And if you're maybe a medium-sized business and you're sending a few people to a booth, that's going to cost you, let's just say for fun, $30,000. That builds up so quickly. If you took that massive number and put it into digital marketing and you had like Myles, I don't have to tell you how insanely that would scale. So if you're doing, just like a cost per click model, you're advertising on, like Google or Facebook, and let's say you're paying something outrageous like $4 or $5 for a lead or $10 for a lead, you're going to get hundreds of leads, thousands of leads for that same amount of money. And to have that kind of outcome in all those trade shows is just like, it's impossible. So just if you look at the numbers, it's kind of a no-brainer to me. But that's your marketing team's job, is to do those numbers and do some experimentation. And I think people are going to find after this year that the economics of trade shows will be difficult to justify. But that's my controversial yet brave opinion.
You know what? I think it's absolutely true. Even on our end, we're being asked all the time how to recreate the virtual trade show. How do you make it intimate? How do you have that cocktail party? How do you connect with people when you're not in front of them? Because, a lot of people in our industry, especially the big, equipment suppliers for the manufacturing facilities, I mean, they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on trade shows. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you're absolutely right. If done properly and you can recreate that personal experience and connect, and it's a magical thing. If they were to take that kind of money and put it into this world and they did it the right way, I mean, it could be amazing for them, because guess what? They're not competing with the Pepsis and Cokes and the big players, are just getting into it. But eventually it's going to be super, super competitive to advertise in this market.
Yeah, and it is getting worse. And it is getting more competitive on every single platform.
Yep.
But I think I gave the comment last week. It's like, this is kind of it's evening the playing field for the small guys, because at a trade show, you're literally all competing for the same attention. But I can get so targeted with my digital advertising that I'm only targeting folks who fit my very specific buyer persona. You're still competing, like you're still doing, some kind of bidding model, I'm sure, but you're all spending pretty much the same amount of money for the same amount of attention. And that's not the case at trade shows, because my booth that's 10 feet high is not the same as Homeboy, who's got a 40-meter skyscraper.
Yeah. And with digital marketing, you can remarket. So imagine if after somebody visited your booth followed them around the show floor. You couldn't escape this booth that was like on your coattails.
I picture a guy like in a big cardboard suit, just like.
Yeah. That's what remarketing is. When you go to the site and you start seeing their ads other places, you get to really double down on that ad impression at least, and remind them that you're there, and hopefully they kick back. And I think I think the trade show is just poorly used. When we virtual trade show, it's doesn't quite fit, because they're really not the same, in my opinion. I think we got to focus less on the trade show and more about building these online communities. Like, you've built an online community, Dave, with all these live streams, right? And so it's a place where people can engage, and they're bringing value to one another, and they're networking, and they're asking questions, and they're building each other up and helping one another and facilitating connections, versus a trade show where it's like, hey, check out this thing I'm selling, right? That's hard to do virtually, but you can definitely build online communities that help push whatever your brand promises and what you want to get out there, push it forward.
No, exactly. And that's it, Dave. Like, your community, I can look at your stream and I'm like, okay, well, 8 people tuned into this event, but that is not your community. Your community is the 12 messages, 30 messages a week I get from folks that I met in your industry, and then every single event, and then every single interaction, and every single video. And it's something that's hard to quantify, but it is so impactful, so impactful.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for even saying that, and we do hear that, and you're right. It's about consistency. Marketing's about being out there, is about the consistent message and consistently being out there. So yeah, and that's what it's all about. I mean, listen, some shows you get 10. We've had shows where Myles and where's everybody at? You get one person you think you're talking to, but it's funny but it lives. So afterwards, we go and look at our YouTube channel, we look at Facebook, we look at LinkedIn, and all of a sudden the stats are there, and you're saying, holy cow, nobody showed up, but this has thousands and thousands of views, and the average time watched, and this and that. So you just don't know. We were just doing the numbers on this. I mean, each show is, it's 52 shows a year.
That's insane.
Right? 52 shows a year.
It is really crazy. And
each show times 6 days a week.
I didn't know that you did it every day. Actually, I only realized that like last week, and I was like, "Oh my god, there's so much content I'm missing out on."
No, I take Sunday off, and not to go to church just so I can sleep.
You're a crazy person.
So,
but Rise is we're trying to build that community too, and it's difficult to quantify, right? Because it's happening in so many different places. Like It's happening in the DMs, it's happening in our Facebook group, it's happening here. So kind of what we're trying to do now is we're looking to bring that conversation on our platform, kind of in a forum format, not like old school forum, but something it's going to work for everybody, just so we can kind of have it in one place and be able to quantify and follow and understand what those conversations are. And we're hoping that with kind of all these different players, we're hoping we can have this like really engaging and educational community that's pushing sustainable home improvement forward.
Yeah, for sure. And that's it. I mean, it takes everybody, right? It takes an army, they say, and it takes a lot of collaboration. I'm just such a big believer in I use the pharmaceutical industry all the time as an example. The pharmaceutical industry, to push their drugs, they go to the consumer. They don't go to the doctor. I mean, they do. They have reps that call on doctors, but they push to the consumer and say, the consumer, ask for this when you go to the doctor. You'll be so happy you did it. And they show they look so happy. This is the same concept to me, like reaching the consumer. So if the consumer is demanding it, the market has to supply it then.
What we were finding, like our homeowners were finding, and our founder understood this at the very beginning, that he was researching and he was understanding all these concepts, and then he was having a hard time finding builders that weren't trying to talk him out of it. Like you have builders who just either don't know how to build, don't know how to build using cutting edge products and technologies, and they don't necessarily have a respect for that. So by educating homeowners and then the builders and then the manufacturers, it kind of is like this domino effect, and you need everybody to be in on it pretty much.
Well, you do, because there's not enough builders that really know how to build to that level either. So there's a double-edged sword here, right? So that's another hard thing, because old school, traditional builders, they still don't get off-site, a lot of them. We have houses that we built 100 years ago. They're still standing. That's the conversation I have quite often. And they are still standing, but they could be standing healthier and better and live longer. So
yeah,
absolutely. I love it. All right. So listen, are we going to pick any fights today?
Let's talk about the age thing.
Let's get into the age thing. All right. Go ahead, Jenny. I'm going to let you take it off.
I've been talking a lot, Myles. It's your turn.
Oh, okay. Well, some backstory for everybody. Before we went live and we're talking about stuff, Jenny had made the comment that she felt young people had like a disproportionate chance to be successful in this virtual environment because of like our predisposition to learning new technologies, right? We can just get a new platform, a new app, a new online tool, and just run with it. And we know what we learned from another tool and how it applies to this new tool, and we're up and running very quickly and don't think twice about it, versus members of the older generation sometimes have a more difficult time with that. So that's what we started to pick a fight on, because my response to that, I just made Jenny's point for her. Sorry, Jenny, but you asked me to talk. So that was her point. My point was, I get that to a point, but then I also call BS on it, because I think it's just an excuse when people say like they can't be an app person, or I can't learn this. And it's like, well, yeah, of course you can't, because you're saying you can't. Like, you're not looking for a reason to find it. And whether it's an online course or YouTube videos or asking for help or just putting in the time to learn it, we can all learn it. I think some people use age as an excuse to say, I'm not an XYZ person. You do it because you're younger than me and you're good at this stuff, when they've just decided to not be good at that stuff.
Yeah. I just have to chime in, because I had a Jenny moment where something just came to mind. So maybe that doesn't happen with my old age very often, Jenny. Usually it takes a good night's sleep to come up with some smart idea or smart comment. So the reality, listen, maybe people out there can relate. My dad, when smartphones came out, said, there's no chance in hell I don't need that. I just need to push my buttons and get to where I got to get to, right? Well, guess who has a smartphone?
Yeah.
He can't seem to live without it now in his 70s.
Guess who's on Facebook all day?
Yeah. My
Right?
82-year-old grandma watches all the live streams. You know, she's in it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just it. So how many people out there can relate? You know, it's fun. We watch the numbers go up. Please hit the like and share button. We want to hear from you today. So, all right, getting back to this. So is there an age, factor when it comes to social media and online tools? Will the younger generation do better than we are doing, or is this causing them a problem? And I think that's kind of the fight here. Is it? I think they're going to tackle this better than we can personally, or me, I should say. I'm older. Anybody?
I think yes, and it's just because Myles and I grew up on the internet, and I don't want to get nerdy on you, but it comes down to like a user interface thing. If you grew up just having to understand how to use devices from the very beginning all day long, you can very easily transfer that skill to another software. But if you didn't, it's like learning a new language every single time. So Myles gave the example of I think someone in his industry, something to do with a PowerPoint, and they needed a PowerPoint made, and he what happened exactly? Tell me again.
Yeah, so somebody said like, "Hey, I'm not a PowerPoint person."
Right.
And you're good at it. You can make a PowerPoint. So I made it because you just got it done. But also it's like, I just don't think it's an acceptable excuse to claim we're not PowerPoint people as an example, right? Like you can become any type of person. You just have to educate yourself.
That is true. And I mostly agree with you. But at the end of the day, though, if I wanted to learn at age 29, if I wanted to learn a new piece of software, it would take me a day, maybe an hour, depending, like a couple days. Whereas if someone who was significantly older than me would have to take quite a long time.
Go ahead, Jenny. Say it like Dave.
And it would take Dave.
Just point.
It would take him weeks to figure it out. I'm not saying he couldn't use it, but it'd take him a long time to get the full juices out of the experience.
Sure.
So I think we all agree, folks of older generations are at a significant disadvantage. I don't think it's fair or awesome, but I think it's difficult for us to think that it's not the case.
Yeah, so I guess I agree with you on that point, right? Like it might take them longer, but they can still learn it.
They can.
So I think that's where I disagree if somebody says they can't learn it, because it's just like you've given up. And I don't think it's an age thing. I think that's just a mindset thing. And you can choose to be an early adopter of something and just figure it out. And maybe it goes away and oh well. But now time you spent, like, remember Periscope when that was a thing, right? And now it's gone. But Periscope was the early days of live streaming. Right. So what you had learned on Periscope would apply to something on StreamYard that we're doing. So it's not always going to be wasted effort. But for sure, yeah, it might be quicker. But I believe anybody can learn anything if they choose to.
It's true. But in the interest of not being ageist, it really is a mindset thing. Like you can be 90 years old and be like an absolute whiz. Like you totally can. If you have the mindset of wanting to learn and change, then that's not going to be a problem for you.
Yeah.
I think it's important. Like you mentioned home builders, somebody did, about like talking them out of it, or like they don't want to do it. I think that's what has been interesting about the pandemic, is that it's forced everybody to sort of shed that stuff, right? Because you don't have the luxury to say, oh, I can't figure this out. Like you have to meet virtually, right? And like with home building, it's going to get to a point where you have to learn how to build sustainably because of the way laws and building codes are coming. You can't escape it. So it's going to force everybody out of their comfort zone.
Yeah. Well, it was Joel Dunfield. Since you saw that, I figured I'd put that up real quick. So thanks for the question, Joel. But you're absolutely right. I mean, is it people that don't want to take the time to learn when you get older, or when you get older, are you looking more of, especially as a builder, if you're just a down, home, like custom home builder or small development builder, and you're in the trees and you're in the trenches all day long. A lot of times what happens is builders, they find something else to do because their knees, their hands, their wrists, they just can't take it anymore. If you spent your whole life being a physical builder and general contractor. But then there's the other side of it, is we don't have the youth in the industry up in the game to make builders want to change. It's like anybody else. Why you look at like Sekisui, home builders over in Japan, and they're one of the largest modular manufacturers out there with homes. But on the other side of this is a conversation I have, so it's kind of third party. But on the other side of it, they really haven't had a whole lot of competition. So do they need to up their production, up their manufacturing? Do they need to, or don't they need to? And that's kind of to me, the issue with this is, I don't think it's they don't want to learn, is why should they in their mind?
Yeah. And like in most markets, there's enough business to go around. Like they're going to have someone these guys have full summers and full building seasons of people wanting homes. So why would they change?
Well, that's it, right? Their business isn't bad. I'm building and I know how to do it. Why do I want to mess with my profit margins? Because, when the 08 crisis hits again, I want to be ahead of it. That's the mentality. So, all right, everybody, if you're just joining us, Jenny Keleher from Rise is on with us today. The next topic that we're going to talk about after we go to the comments here in a second is, what do you miss most about trade shows? So we'll leave that up. That's going to be our next conversation. But first, let's go see who's been making some comments here. Mark Willie's active, but you know what? You made a comment earlier about knowing what people are doing. You never have to wonder about Mark. I mean, Mark's everywhere.
He's everywhere.
He is everywhere. All right, let's get down into the trenches here a little bit further. Ashley Abernethy. Oh, we did that one, didn't we? Got to go further. All right. Jennifer Crocus, great story about Matt and the foundation of Rise. When you can't find the community you're looking for, build it better yourself. Absolutely, right? I agree. Another question here, I think, from Jennifer. Jenny Keleher, do you think this type of forum is helping to replace the intimate conversations that happen after the trade show, the dinner party or a cocktail party where people actually connect?
I think that's the piece that we're all going to miss. Like, I don't think much can replace that, other than like if you connect with someone on LinkedIn and all of a sudden you become Facebook friends. I don't know, but this brings me to like, what do you miss most about trade shows? And a lot of business happens at the after parties. It happens at dinner. It happens over drinks. And that is something that is really, really hard to replicate digitally.
I had to put up It's a Fight. Go ahead, Myles. I'll let you chime in, and then I'm gonna go over here and put on my boxing gloves.
All right. Well, yeah, I think what this can't replace is what happens when you're in a group of people and you can observe someone while you're also interacting with them. Like right now, this is very much a one-on-one, two-on-one conversation, right? When you're at the dinner party, you can see, how does somebody address the wait staff? What do they order for a drink? Are they sloppy when they eat? Do they salt their food before they taste it? All these like quirky things with people that can give you an insight into their personality and whether or not you would be compatible to do business with them.
Right.
This is sort of like social media where you just get the highlight reel, right? This is like, we're all kind of on a stage right now and it's a performance more so than it is an actually like intimate interaction.
Well, all right. So where's my boxing gloves?
Dave's going to fight us.
Here we go. So here's what I think. I think you take the marketing budget, like, Jenny was talking about, that couple $100,000 a year. You pour it in, and I'm doing this now with people. You pour it into the social media side of this, right? And you have different events set up different ways so you can narrow down who the prospects really are. You always have, people that'll show up and comment in the banners, right? But there are ways to use social media, to use live streaming, to create events and start telling stories with these events and bringing the people in from the outside. Like, hey, I've never met Jenny. And most people wouldn't know it. I've never met Mark Willie face to face. We've never shook hands ever in our lives.
Get out of here. That is so upsetting.
So but Mark, I know he's in the background, but this is what we're doing. And, we're like brothers in arms. Myles, we've met from earlier life experiences, but this has, and there's so many people that I know that I've never, and the comment in the comment section, you'd think I'd know all these people personally. But the reality of it is, the way we have gone about doing things and working with other corporations, it's almost like a tiered effect where you go full out, you talk about what you're doing, then you go, then you make a more intimate gathering. Not everything we do is here online, public. And you can actually drill down and drill down to prospects, right? Because you go to a trade show with 100,000 people, you're hoping you leave with a couple good leads, unless you're a software or something, but if you're an equipment or a manufacturer or robotics, you're hoping to get one or two sales out of that. Yeah. So that's my fight. I disagree. I think you can reach more people and have more intimate conversations. And when you narrow it down to 6, guess what? Then you can fly 6 people out and have an intimate conversation, sit down and actually do business together without risking yourself having to go through 1,000 people in public with the COVID. It's a better way to bring it all together.
So, but this comes back to the outcome-based measurement. If you're going to a trade show and you're focused on outcomes, I think that mediums like this can give you the same outcomes.
Yep.
I don't know if you're going to see the white in the guy's eyes and you're going to get to know him, and it's just going to take longer because it's going to take 3, 4, 5 calls with Myles for me to sell him an ad on Rise. But if he met me in person.
Well, and you're right. It's a lot of it factors in what are you selling. Does it have a longer buying cycle where you need to build that relationship and it's a bigger contract, or are we selling something that's very transactional,
right?
Equipment or something that you can target with a dynamic ad set on Facebook through your product feed and e-commerce, like all this stuff. So it's like anything, there's no one size fits all.
No.
Dave, I think what you're talking about is like going back to my point about the online community. You have these big events where anybody and everybody can join online, right? And you start narrowing it down to invite only summits and things like that where you're kind of becoming your own trade show host instead of waiting for the trade shows to come back. You become your own association. It's your own brand. Going back to our whole topic here about how you increase your influence. It's like, don't wait for somebody else to decide trade shows are back. Start making your own trade show. And then that's where the results are coming.
Yeah. I like that. 100%. All right, let's keep going through the comments here. Man, can you guys believe it's been 50 minutes already?
Oh, wow.
Absolutely. This is so painful.
I have so much to say.
That's okay. We're not on any tight limits. Jennifer on Facebook. Oh, the same Jennifer I know. It's an age thing. That's why we had kids so they could teach us about all the new tech that's out there. They are Dave's self-appointed TikTok managers. They are. Hey, listen, TikTok, I'm telling you, everybody hates TikTok, and what's going on, but
it's a thing.
It's a thing. And, I say this, we have people all the time, you say Facebook. I'm not doing Facebook. I'm tired of seeing people's food and this and that. And I agree. Like, I don't do that. But the reality of it is Facebook almost changed our democracy. I mean, these corporations are getting called into Congress because they control that much. So if you're a business and you're not at least putting yourself on there, I think to me, it's a big mistake. All right. I'm off my soapbox on that. Scrolling down. All right. We did this one, right, Myles, I think? No, we did not.
I don't think we did.
Marketing dollars into social media. I think you really need to know your customer. Then, like Jenny said, you can target your ads and produce better results. 100%. What do you think about that?
Yeah, he's right. I mean, you're going to waste a lot of ad spend targeting people that would never buy your product if you don't know who they are. What brand cereal they ate for breakfast? Did they go to Starbucks or Dunkin'? I mean, all the crazy ways you can target people based on their interests. You got to get that granular.
It's easier now than ever, though, because the platforms learn without you telling them the thing that your customer is. They will eventually tell you who your customer is based on who's engaging. Like, that's how smart and how effective it is now. It's actually wild. It's allowing marketers like me to get pretty lazy. It's like,
yeah.
It's crazy, honestly.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Kind of what we were just talking about. It feels a lot like kind of the whole rise of influencer marketing, right? Like, I think I was creating an asset for, I think it was called like How to Market Your Sustainable Knowledge or something. And it's just crazy stat. It's like anyone who's under the age of 30, they won't buy a product. I think it's like 60% of people under the age of 30 won't buy a product unless they had someone tell them to buy it. And so the young people especially, they need authenticity. They need the brands that they're buying from to be honest and transparent and authentic. And that's why these influencers like Dave Cooper are so powerful, because that's how people want to buy, and that's how they want to develop relationships. So you have these young folks, especially, who more and more of their lives are online and digital. That's how they want to be marketed to. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the rest of the generations, like, we enjoy this kind of interaction. It's not a bad replacement.
Yeah. No, for sure, for sure. I agree, and thank you for what you said. It's funny. I think keeping it real, like you said, is a big deal. That's the main thing, and I think why people have really grasped on, at least in our industry, to the conversations we've all been having, and it's just not me, is because it's unedited. These are real conversations. There's real people in the audience. We put their comments up. It's not a canned marketing spiel. And I think that's, really what's powerful about this stuff. All right, let's go. Ashley Abernathy, how can we support and encourage the folks that think technology isn't for them? That's a great question too.
I'll take that one since
I knew it.
I love that charge. Yeah, it's a great question, Ashley. And I think it's just reminding them that it is for them. And like in life, you get what you look for. If you look for a problem, you find it. If you look for a solution, you also find it. So I think it's just being supportive of everyone and letting them know that it's not super hard to learn whatever it is, putting your arm around them and showing them as best as you can that they can do it, and not like tech shaming people, right? Or being an ageist like Jenny joked about. But that's a thing. I've had many people make assumptions about me because of my age for a long time. And it's frustrating. So it's frustrating as the young guy, and I'm sure it's frustrating as the older person as well. So just that inclusivity, I think, is huge.
Yeah, for sure. And here this kind of piles on to that whole comment. So Charles Warfield, the lack of young people coming into the building industry is a huge problem. That is really the problem to fix. All right. So there's a soapbox here for sure that I have. And I think that, we just do not do a good job of talking of all the great things happening in our industry. The way it's changing with 3D printing and, robots coming into the industry, the way we use a hammer is changing. Because I know it. Kids, they don't want to grow up swinging a hammer. Some do. Some want to like to work with their hands in carpentry. But I always say this all the time. A kid that goes to Yale and a kid that goes to be an auto mechanic have more in common today than my generation. You just didn't hang out with each other. You were on that side or this side. You're either a good student or you were going to, trade school type thing. But today they all use technology. They all play video games together. It doesn't matter what you're doing. They all have that. And I think we as an industry, and we're getting a little better at it, and thank goodness for people like Mike Rowe out there running around doing things, who is, by the way, the keynote speaker this year at the IBS, which I think is really cool for the virtual International Builder Show. But the reality of it is we need to do a better job talking about how great our industry is and all the different opportunities and, all the BIM and 3D worlds that we are creating. That's the power here, the robots. Heck, NASA's hiring Icon Printing, right, to study ash so they can build on the moon with their 3D concrete printer.
Crazy.
How cool is that?
I think the problem.
Excited.
I don't think the problem's solved at the industry level either. I think it's easy for people to say the building industry has a problem. Right. We have to get young people in. But when we go that macro with it, it becomes somebody else's problem. It's easy for it to become somebody else's problem. Right? It's the industry's fault, not my company's fault. We're great, right? I think we all have to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, like, what could we be doing better to make things more accessible to the younger generation, to get them excited about it, to hire them and not just make the claims that they don't know anything because they'd rather be playing those video games. There's so many people that can wear blame in this. And until everybody realizes that if we're going to change the industry, we have to first change ourselves, our individual roles in it. And then that's going to build up to the macro thing. So it is a problem. I don't have the one answer, but I think that's the point, is that we all have to have our own individual answers. And then as a whole, it becomes solved, or it's going to be solved for us. Like if we don't solve it, it's going to be solved for us by somebody else. Google or somebody's going to come in and just wipe out the little guys.
Right.
If we don't do it. So that's the choice.
Yeah. If the building industry doesn't smarten up, Google's going to come in.
Yeah. Well, guess what?
Elon Musk or somebody, he's going to do it. Yeah.
Well, it's not if they already are in, first of all, Google and Amazon, they're already playing in this world. So it's just a matter of when they figure out exactly how they want to roll out is when it's going to happen. In my opinion, is how it's going to happen, because they have unlimited funds to do what they want in this industry. So they're already researching it and doing stuff. Go ahead, Jenny.
So how's offsite affecting this? Because it's my understanding that building an offsite home requires a very different skill set than the traditional way of building. I know that I heard a while ago, like earlier on in the year, that we were expecting that was going to be kind of the boon for getting more young people in the industry. Are you guys still feeling that way?
Well, yes, I mean, 100%, right? Nobody, when I say nobody, I should be careful. Younger people aren't really interested in walking on, cold, frozen sill plates at 5:30 in the morning, setting up for their day on a job site. So being able to work inside a controlled environment where it's always the same temperature, especially the newer manufacturing facilities that are coming online that have a lot of automation built into them, whether you're programming automation on the factory floor, or you're working the BIM and 3D rendering programs that are communicating not only with the customer all the way through the facility to the product coming out the back door. These are all things that I think that are going to start resonating with the younger generation. But we don't really have a vehicle to deliver this information to the young people, because most of the high schools don't have trade schools anymore. So where's all the trade schools? We're at least in our area, we don't. There's some, but the trade schools where I'm at in Connecticut, guess what? They all teach towards the naval. Groton, General Electric Motors up here. They build all the nuclear submarines. So they have carpenter schools. But guess what their carpenter schools are? Because they would frame the submarine first to make the molds and try new dimensions out. Huh. So it's not geared towards our trade. So these are some of the issues I have, and I think we need a bigger way of pushing this information out, for sure. All right, so moving on, Myles. I see your little note. Myles only has another 10 minutes with us, but that's all right, Myles. I have a wonderful guest today. We can go all day because
I was gonna say I'm here for 10 more minutes, and then I got to hop. But if you guys are good, then.
Well, let's keep. Let's keep running through. We're over an hour now. I want to get to these last questions, and we'll go from there and make some comments, because we got some people joining us, which I think is wonderful. So, Joel Dunfield, I mean, you're active today, Joel. Thank you so much. I'd love to get into the building industry, but I'm not a carpenter. What would you suggest? All right. So the biggest thing that we found with people wanting to be in this industry is participate in the conversation. If you show up on this show, and I know Mark and all these other people watching right now, Monday through Friday, and you join the conversation, ask questions, I'll call you out. You'll be surprised how many people will reach out to you to see what you're interested in doing. We need people in the trade. So I don't know what your skill set is, but I think between what we're doing, going to Build with Rise website and commenting on all their posts and being active, I think if you have good work ethics and you like the building industry and you're bringing some value, I don't think it'll be very hard for you. That's my.
I used to work with Joel, and I haven't talked to him in years. Hey, man, nice to see you.
Yeah.
Very talented IT professional, software engineer, systems analyst fella.
Man, that's perfect.
We'd love to have him, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I guess depending on what you want to do, I mean, there's so many people like in the automation side of this that would love to have somebody like yourself in, for sure. All right. Anybody know this guy right here, Matt Daigle? Listen, great conversation as always, Dave Cooper, and thank you, Jennifer and Mark, for the shout outs. Jenny Keleher is doing the Rise team proud. So, yeah, absolutely. Matt, do you know who that is, by the way, Jenny?
Fearless leader, Matt Daigle.
Famous Matt Daigle. Yes. So Matt is, the founder of Rise. Had him on the show not too long ago. Salt of the earth person. We love having you guys on, and we love the collaboration when we do have it. So thanks for tuning in, Matt. That's a big deal for us. We always love it when you say hello. All right. Ashley Abernathy, what about product launches? A lot of companies use trade shows for this. Virtual reality.
Man.
Yeah.
All right. I'm ready.
Okay. I have something to say. So apparently augmented reality is outpacing virtual reality in a very huge way.
Yeah.
A really great example, IKEA has there's tons of them in our industry, but IKEA has a really great app where you can pretty much just be in a room and superimpose their product in your room and change all the colors and change, you know what I mean? Like paint colors, product, anything, cladding, and that's augmented reality.
Right.
I think Ashley's correct, but I would replace that V with an A.
Yeah, well, you're all right. So you're right, but how about live, like we're doing now?
Yeah.
These are other things that we're doing. I know Myles as well. We have so many shows where we're actually going to do product spotlights, product launches, because we have a whole backpack set up, so it's high definition. And and I'm not plugging this, but this is what's happening. So we'll go out and we will set up a live show where the audience, just like here, can ask questions, participate. And we can even do it through a Zoom call where you could bring people into the conversation as well, depending on who it is. So, but I agree with you. I think it's definitely going to augmented reality, and I do think it's going to live on location. All right, moving on. That was another great. Ashley's all over it today.
Hey,
Let me go down here. Let's see. Michelin Joyce, BCom. Google is an investor in plant prefab. Actually, Amazon. I didn't, maybe Google, but I thought it was Amazon.
Could be both.
Either way.
Yeah. Either way, just whether Google or they're in it. So yeah, Michelin, thank you so much for tuning in, and hey, give us a like. Let us know what you do out there. That's pretty cool. All right, everybody. What's that?
Michelin's on the Rise team too.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
Stacking it today.
I love it. Perfect. Then you got a big following at Rise. They must like you. That's good job security. We got Andrew Sealy out there. Who else do we have out there? We got Mika's out there. Salaway. I love it. All right, everybody. Myles, we're gonna wrap this up, I think, in time.
Let's do it.
Unless anybody has any other comments. Did I miss anybody? Can you see any questions I missed, Myles, anywhere? Don't want to leave people. Oh, you know what? We didn't answer, but I don't think anybody put any comments in there. What is everybody missing from the trade show?
So
what are we missing from the trade show? Yeah, so it is Amazon. Cool. So
all the free crap I end up taking home and throw away, right? All
Yeah.
the promotional stuff.
My coffee mugs that I got.
Oh my gosh, I don't need any more of that stuff.
No.
The corns and blisters in my feet.
It's a lot of walking, right? 1 million square feet of showroom floor, I think, is what it was last year. 1 million.
What I miss about it is the purposeful detachment from my everyday life to go be fully immersed in something else, right?
That's
like,
true.
We're doing this live stream, and like I could be off at 2:15. I have another meeting I got to jump right into, right? And so we're always on in the virtual environment, but when you go off to Las Vegas or Orlando for the National Builder Show, you're there for a week, and yeah, you're checking emails, but it's a full immersion experience. There you go, beer. Versus what this is kind of like ad hoc, piece by piece. So I think just that is the biggest thing. You can't kind of replace that. I'm not going to worry about anything else but education and learning new things and just sort of a professional development hiatus at these things.
I love the grind, man. Like, okay, we got 3 days. We got to get as many of these as possible. Like,
right?
I love that. Like,
yeah. It's so stressful, but it's so much like it's so rewarding. I agree with you on the grind. I miss the grind, but I miss the social interaction. I miss the social interaction. I miss just running into people I haven't seen for a long time, and you just bump into them randomly. So I agree 100%. So
it was. I remember I was like I was a booth person. That was me, and we did like a contest and all this kind of stuff, and had people signing up. And I would say maybe 2 people out of 10, when I told them that we were doing sustainable home improvement, they would freak out. They would lose their mind. And they'd be like, oh my gosh, finally, somebody cares and cares about it. And they would stay forever and they would talk and they were so excited that we existed.
Yeah.
Whereas the other, good portion was just wasn't there yet. But I was so excited to meet those people. Because
and it's exciting to see all the new stuff. I mean, there's just things you never would know was out there unless you went to the show. So, all right. Ashley, you have any parting words for us? She's quiet. No parting words? All right. Nothing? All right. Myles, you got to get on the road. Ashley,
yes.
Ashley, you stick around tight after the outro. Listen, everybody, tomorrow on BS Friday, we have Prudence Vieira and William Hayward on the show with Mark Barenaked Willie and I on BS Friday, Building Science Friday. So if you want to learn more about building science, every Friday, 1 o'clock, join us for that show. Myles, we're going to get you out of here just in time for your meeting. Ashley, hang tight. I'll come back to you after the outro. And listen, hit that like and share button one more time. And please, if you're not liking and following, please like and follow us now. And also go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. All right. We'll see you, everybody. Thanks, Myles. We'll see you.
See you guys.